Hello guys, in today's watercolor tutorial I'm gonna show you how to paint this beautiful pink watercolor lily. Let's get started. So for this painting I'm gonna use 100% cotton paper, as I always suggest you to use, and just 4 colors. So I'm gonna use quinacridone violet rose, brilliant opera rose, cadmium yellow deep. You can choose any other yellow from your palette, and Hooker Green Deep by Rembrandt. I'm gonna use 3 brushes, number 1 by Grabby, number 6 and number 4 by Silver Brush Black Velvet. So let's get started. I start with kneaded eraser. As always, I remove some pencil lines that will just make the painting look more dirty and not so light with watercolor. So I suggest you do the same. You can also sketch in another piece of paper and then transfer your sketch to the watercolor paper. And let's start with discovering our color mixes for this painting. So we use only 4 colors, but from just these 4 colors we are going to mix all the shades that we need for this painting, and I'm gonna show you how in the process of painting. So I already have my main colors on the palette, and we start with petals of the lily, and I'm mixing opera and quinacridone violet rose with each other, and we just get some pinkish mix because opera rose is quite bright, so we don't want to make this color very bright. So we start with this petal and we cover it with just water. You can see that it's a little bit pinkish, but it's just because I didn't wash my brush properly. But it's okay, since it's the color that we are going to cover this petal with. So one thing that you need to keep in mind, that lily's petals, they have this line inside of the petal. So I'm trying to avoid, while I'm covering the surface with water, I'm trying to avoid covering this small line in the center of the petal, because it will be just like almost white, so we will make details on that later. And now I'm just covering the wet surface of the petal with pink color and trying to blend this watercolor with water to create proper watercolor surface. And next to the down part of this petal, it's darker, so I'm trying to shift my paint to this down side and to make it more bright. And now I'm using the mix of Hooker green and yellow deep to create this greenish line in the center. Because if you will see the reference, if you will look at the reference, you will see that in the center of the petal there is a little bit green part. And then I move to another petal far away from the one that I painted already, because we don't want colors to mix with each other. We want to keep these petals separate. So we are just working one by one for the petals that don't touch each other on the painting. So I also cover the whole petal with water, and basically that's it. That's the main principle of painting this flower. We are going just to cover the surface with water and then add some more dense color to the petals and try to move it down and to make it darker. in the bottom part. And right in the center of the flower we have some stamens that are lighter than the petals behind. So when we are painting the petals, we want to avoid these stamens and to paint the petals right behind with darker color. For the darker color, I have the mix of quinacridone, violet rose, and green color. So it helps me to use this darker color for the center of the flower. And for the center of the petal, as I did before, I'm using this light green color and just trying to apply in the center of the petal. Yeah, I know it looks strange, it looks not logical, but believe me, trust me, it will work. And we are adding some more dark pink color while the surface of the paper is still wet. This is a wet on wet technique and it's quite challenging, but once you master it, it will really bring you joy. So we are moving to next petal and the same, covering it with water. And for this petal, while the surface is still wet, I'm trying to apply color on the edges, and also we want to make sure that the part behind other petal that we already painted is dark. So here I'm just adding a little bit of green color for making this pink color darker. So make sure that you use like 80% of quinacridone violet and 20% of green. So your color, result of your color mix won't look gray or like brown, but it still will look pink, but just darker than the pure color from the tube. And now we cover the furthest petal with water, and I stop applying water closer to the center of the flower because I'm going to apply more darker pink color behind these stamens. So right now I'm just applying a bit of color on the wet surface of the paper, and as always try to avoid this line in the center that we are going to paint a little bit later. So I'm using this darker color, quinacridone violet, and mix it with water, add a little bit of green, as I told you, like just a small amount to make the color more dark. And very precisely I go with this color behind the stamens, so it will create the shadow behind it, and it will be more visible that these stamens are lighter than the petals behind it. So I'm trying to avoid these small little lines of the stamens and also the brown parts of the lily. I don't know how it's called. Actually, I'm not too strong in botanicals terminology, but I hope that you understand what I mean. And it's quite important to work with this petal while it's still wet, so the colors will nicely blend on the paper. And also we are doing the same thing that we did with the previous petal. We want to add the darker color behind the petal that we painted first on the left side. So the petals that placed next to each other, they need to be different density of color. So it will be understandable that one petal is further and behind it, and some are closer to us. And again, we're doing basically the same. We cover the surface of the petal with water, then apply color to the edges and darker color to the center. And I see that this petal is quite warm in terms of color, so I take some yellow color and mix it with pink color and add it to the very tip of the petal. The color will blend with other colors on the petal because the surface is still wet. So I leave petals for now, and I'm going to move to flower bud and to paint it. So I need to prepare my color mixes. I take green color, add some pinkish color and some yellow color to find the right shade. So I see that I need more pinkish, and it's just about experiments. I'm trying to find the right color, and this is how you do it. You just add in the color that you need more, like you don't know the exact proportions that you need, but you have to take a look at the palette that I have and mix some similar colors. So I also using a mix of the green color, the hookah green deep, and the yellow color to have this like light greenish yellowish color for the tips of the flower buds. And also I need this like pinkish color mixed with green, because the rosebud have this very foggy pink color, and we are trying to have this mix done. Now you need to clean your brush and to take the clean water and cover the surface of the flower bud with just water. As you can see, it's a little bit pinkish because the water is already not very clean. You can actually change your water a few times because it will help you to make your painting more clean. So on the very tip of the bud, I use this warm greenish color, and also at the bottom of the blossom. And the surface has to be very wet, so you can see that colors will blend with each other. And I apply this mixture of yellow, pink and green to the center. Because this blossom is not a flower yet, so it has a lot of green color in it, like leaves. But it already has some pinkish color, so we are trying to make this on our painting. And if you can see, I'm just lifting the paint from the top to bottom, and you can also do the same if you see that your color is too thick and you want to be it more transparent. You can just wash your brush and dry it with a napkin, and then remove some paint from the paper. I hope that you are using the cotton paper, because 100% cotton paper, it's really important for paintings like this. For the result that you will get, it's much easier. Of course, you can work on the cellulose paper, but it gets dry very fast, and it might be a problem when you are painting in wet on wet technique. So I'm adding some darker color, green color, to the bottom of the blossom. I see that it's too dark, so I do the same. I wash my brush, I dry it with a napkin, and I just remove some paint and just mix colors on the paper. And I also add the pink color. So as you can see, I leave the white line in the middle. It's gonna be darker than the whole blossom, but we will work on that later. So now we are moving to the greenish flower bud. I hope that you understand me. And for that we are mixing the color of hookah green deep and yellow. And I suggest you paint this flower bud in half. So I'm painting the left part of the flower to another blossom, the last one that we have, and as you can see on the reference, it looks quite pale, like pale rose. So that means that we are going to use more water, just a little bit of color. I'm using my mixture of this pinkish color with quinacridone violet and some greenish color. And to the tips of this flower, we, as always, will add some greenish color mixed with yellow. Now we are going to paint this line in the middle of the blossom that we have, flower bud, and I'm using the mixture of the green color, adding some quinacridone violet, and you see that I have different mixes, but sometimes I just add some more color that I need. So I just make very thin lines. And as you can see, it's like two lines, and in between it's lighter part. So for now I'm leaving it white. Then I wash my brush and I will just use a lighter color and go in from the bottom of the flower to the top. And also we see that in the bottom of the flower it's more green, and in the top it's more pinkish. So right now I'm gonna add some more greenish color to the wet surface of this center line. And I see that color is quite dense, so I remove the paint with the dry and clean brush. Okay, let's come back to the last petal that we have on our flower. It's not so easy to paint these petals that we don't see fully, so they're like in this different strange shape that the other petals, but I'm pretty sure that you will manage to paint it. So I cover the surface with water, as always, and I'm using more opera rose color to make this petal more bright, more vivid, because as you can see on the reference it's quite pink and it's quite bright. So I'm just using this very dense color, because before we used more like mixture of the opera rose and quinacridone violet, and here I'm using just opera rose with maybe a small amount that I have on the palette of quinacridone violet. And this petal, it has like white tips, so I'm trying to apply color to the center of the petal, and the edges of the petal I'm just using water and pretty dry brush to avoid this dense color on the edges. And you can add some more darker color to the further part of this petal, because it's like going down to the stamens and it looks darker. And once I cover all the petal with color, I decide to add some more yellowish color. So you can see that if you mix opera pink with yellow, you will get this like orange color. So I add this very burning color to the surface of the petal from the left side, and I remove some of the paint with the dry clean brush. Okay, we will leave the flower for now, and we will come back to the flower buds that we have. And I move into the right part of my green flower bud, and I'm using this mixture of green and yellow. And the color should be pretty dense. So as you can see, even though I wetted the surface before, I apply a pretty dense color, and in the center, like closer to the center, this part will get darker. So I add some more green color to this mixture, and I'm using a little bit of pink color to make it just right. And I'm adding to the wet surface this darker green color. And now I want to move to the stamens. I mix yellow, green and some ochre, and I add a lot of water to just have this very light color, and it's getting darker and more green to the bottom. But I can see that the petal that I was painting before is still wet, so we cannot work while it's still wet. So I'm moving to the blossom right now that we have, and I add some darker lines to the center. So while I'm still waiting for the petal get dry, I decided to move to the stems. For this purpose, I'm mixing the quinacridone violet and green color and adding some white. So I'm trying to get this darker shade, which is not so green, but more like purple, brown, something like that. So I'm mixing colors until I get the right consistency and the right color. Okay, I think I have it right now, and I starting with this stem that it's quite dark and it's behind the petals of the main flower that we have. And I'm just making a very small line, thin line from the left side, and then I'm moving a little bit closer to the right side, and you can also add water so your color won't look like it's just all the same. So if you will remove some paint from the stem, it will help look more natural. And now let's move to another stem. I add some more yellow color to my mixture to make it a little bit more greenish than brownish that we had before. And I cover the surface of the stem with water. And then I'm using this color, and also I'm starting from the left side, and then color will mix with water. And I also can a little bit dry my brush and to continue like lifting color from the left side to the right side. And while the surface is still wet, I want to add some more darker color to the bottom and to the top of the stem. It's just for the purpose to make color of the stem to not look the same for the whole surface. Also, you can remove some color from the center and to make some darker spots somewhere, so it will look more realistic and artistic. Okay guys, we are almost done on the painting flower, and we have just to add some smaller details to this strange, difficult petal that we have. So I'm adding a little bit darker color at the bottom of the petal, just like you can see on the reference. And I also want to add this darker color that I already told you about, the quinacridone violet rose mixed with a little bit of greenish color. And I add this darker color behind the light petal that we have on the left side. So basically the main principle is to switch between different parts of the painting. So you are moving from one petal to the stems, to the blossoms, etc. And now it's the right time to get back to the stamens that we had started already. If you are watching this video before start to paint, you cannot make this mistake that I did. But if you are painting with me at the same time, it's not a big problem, don't worry. If something goes wrong, you can always fix it. So right now I'm trying to cover the stamens. As I told you before, it's lighter from the top and darker to the bottom. Okay, I might name wrong these things in the center of the flower, so sorry. I hope that you are looking at the picture and you understand what I'm painting. So right now I'm gonna paint these stamens, like dark brown things in the center of the flower. So for this purpose I'm using yellow and quinacridone violet, and I'm trying to make this brown color, so I also might add some green color. And as you can see, it's the darkest parts of the flower, so we are using a very dense color, so not a lot of water, and our brush almost dry. It just has color on it. The pure color, you can see that I'm mixing right on the palette, not even almost adding water. And also I want to add some more like orange spots, so I like this mix of yellow and opera pink, and I'm adding these orange parts to the stamens. And this thing right in the middle of the flower, it's not brown, but it's light yellowish greenish, so I'm using a little bit of color and a lot of water to cover the surface of this stamen. And right now we are ready to move to painting leaves. It's almost last part of our painting, and I would say the easiest one. So I'm mixing the hookah green deep and yellow, all colors already on my palette. I hope that you can understand what it's what. And also I had this mixture of quinacridone violet, and I'm adding more greenish color to that mix, and I'm trying to get this darker green color. So I have to mix some lighter green color and darker green color. I hope that you get it. And now, as always, I cover the left part of the leaf with water, and I'm adding some lighter green color to this part that I covered with water. I suggest when you cover the part that you're going to paint with water, don't go to the edges, like put water in the middle, and then you lift your color to the edges of the part that you are painting. And also I'm switching right away to another leaf that is also very small, so we may not go deep in different shades and different colors. So I'm just covering the surface of the leaf, and I also try to leave this white line in the middle, not cover with the color, green color, because we will just make this detail, it will be lighter, and when you paint in leaves, it's a really nice life hack that you can use. And in this leaf that I'm coming back is just the right side, it's darker than the left side, so I'm just covering with this more darker color. And it looks like the color all the same, so I'm just using clean brush to remove some paint from the center of the leaf, and I'm adding some more yellowish color to make it look more like vivid. And now I want to paint the stem that we have on the right side, and it's more warm and it's lighter than the ones that we painted before. So I'm just using this mixture of yellow, greenish and pinkish color, and I also remove some paint from the center of the stem. So and now I'm moving to another leaf, and I also started with covering with more greenish color, and actually it's next to the stem that we painted just before it, so try to avoid mixing colors, so leave a little bit of space between them so the colors won't mix. If you find it difficult, it's better to move to another leaf and then come back to this leaf that I'm painting right now. So it's just behind our petals, so it have to be very dark, not like very dark, not black dark, but quite darker than the ones that we had before. So as you can see, I started to apply lighter green color, and then I'm adding a darker color behind the petals and to the tip of the leaf. And now I let this leaf dry, and I'm moving to another stem that we have, and I'm using slightly warmer color. So when painting leaves, it's important to mix different shades. So basically we have only green color, pink color and yellow color, but depending on which color you added more, you will have different shades. And it's important that you switch between warm and cold colors, warm green and cold green. So if you have more like hook green deep color, you will get more cold green, and if you add more yellow, you will get more warm green. And we are switching to the small leaf or something that we have behind the flower we cannot see, but we try to repeat the same as we see on the reference. And on the photo I see that it's quite darker than the stem it's connected to. So I'm using the darker color and I'm just covering it with darker green color. You can also come back to the leaf that you painted, and if it's still wet, you can add some darker shades to the leaf, what I'm doing right now. And as always, I'm using the dry brush, and I'm trying to remove some paint so it looks nicer. And now I'm coming back to the leaf that I painted earlier, and I'm using just darker color. So that's why I don't leave this white line in the middle, because if your parts, like left part and the right part of the leaf, will be different in terms of contrast, like one part will be darker than the other part, it's okay. You can just paint, it will look natural. Now I want to paint the leaf that we have behind the stem, and for this I'm adding some green color mixing with pink color. I don't know, I already have a lot of colors on my palette, so you just have to find the right color for it. And this small part behind the stem is the darkest part, and I'm just covering with color. And for this one I'm using a little bit more water, and while I'm painting it, the tip of the leaf should be lighter and the part behind the stem is darker, so I'm adding a little bit more darker green color. And with this leaf in the middle, we have these light lines in the center of the leaf, and I'm trying to color this leaf part by part, separating by these white lines that we will cover with color later. So it's quite dark. It's one of the darkest leaves on the painting. So I'm just trying to paint these darker parts of the leaf. And don't forget that there is a lighter tip that goes like above the leaf, and we are just leaving this small triangle in the top of the leaf, and we will come back to it later. Then I paint a bigger leaf, and it's quite easy. Just try to switch between different shades of green, trying to add more pinkish or more greenish colors, darker or lighter, and just one by one cover the surface of the leaf. Now I'm moving to the main stem of the flower, and actually it's quite light and it's quite warm. So I'm using the mix where I have more yellow than green. Well, not more yellow than green, but more yellow than I had before painting the leaves. And you can look at the reference and you will see that it has darker shade just behind the petal that we have, behind the flower. So to the top I add more greenish color to make it darker. And it will blend on the surface of the paper. I can also add some darker color on the left side of the stem. And finally, I'm moving to the last leaf that we have. Don't forget to avoid the triangle that we have from another leaf that in the middle. So I'm avoiding this small part and I'm just covering this leaf with green color, because later I will add some more details to this leaf once it gets dry, and it will look natural, don't worry. And also one small stem left. It's very dark. As I can see on the reference, it's almost the darkest part of the greenery of this flower. So I'm just using a very dark color to cover this thing. So basically, when you see the reference and you see the photo and you don't know what the parts are, what it's called or where it goes, you just see the parts, you just repeat what you see on the image. And basically you are trying to analyze before you start painting. What are the darkest parts of this painting, of this image? What are the lightest parts? What are the warmest parts and what are the coldest parts? And you switch between these cold and warm parts, dark and light parts. So the only thing left is the last bottom part of the stem, the main stem. And I also use this warm color, warm green color. I mix a little bit darker color for the right part of the stem because I see it on the photo. And I'm just covering it with quite dense color. But try to make the stem lighter than the leaves behind, because I can see that the stem is lighter than the leaves. So now we are going to details. We finished our flower and actually I like what I got as a result, and I'm trying to add more details. So I use this very light mixture and I use a lot of water and just a little bit of pink color, and I cover these white lines in the middle of petals. Sometimes I use darker color to highlight this line. So right now, for example, I'm using darker color to highlight the line that we had in the center. And for this petal I also want to highlight it with the darker line that we have. But it shouldn't be very dark, because otherwise your flower won't look natural, so try to avoid taking color right from the tube. Start to mix it with water, and maybe you can also test the color that you get on the piece of paper, like testing piece of paper. For these thin lines I'm using brush number 1, and it's really thin and it helps me to make these thin nice lines. And I'm not sure what brush you have, but once you get the smallest brush that you get, it should work. Okay, I noticed that I didn't paint this small part behind the stem, the main stem, the part of the leaf, so I take the darker color and I apply to the leaf. And also I totally forgot about this light small tip of the leaf in the middle, so I'm taking the light warm color and I'm covering this small triangle that we had just in the center of this leaf. And right now I'm taking this also very light greenish color and I'm covering these white lines in the center of the leaf. I also want to add some darker parts to the stamens, or the things in the center of the flower, if you know what I mean. If you know how they called properly, please comment on this video, it will really help me. So I'm taking the darker colors and I'm just highlighting these parts. And also I'm trying to avoid leaving white spots on the painting. So everywhere where I see the white spots, I'm trying to cover it. And I also see that lilies, they have some small dots. So I'm taking this brownish color that we have used for stamens, and I'm just adding a little bit of these smaller dots to the center of the petals. Right now I'm going to add some more lines, some more details to the flower bud, and I'm using the mixture of the green color and the pink color, the quinacridone violet rose. The same, when you are adding the details, you need to use the same color or similar color that you painted the main part. So basically I'm using the same color that I painted the flower buds. And the same thing we're doing with the leaves. As you can see, they have these dark lines on them, so I'm using the dark green color to make these very thin lines on the leaves. So we are almost ready. We are adding just some small details to our flower. I hope that you like this tutorial and you like the flower that you get as a result. Please leave comments how it went with your painting and follow my Instagram for more painting videos and tips.